Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Atpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Pravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I think this evening we start the 4th chapter. Is that correct?
We're on number 40 in chapter 3.
Number 40?
Yeah.
I thought we finished it. Okay. So will you help us out, Ganesh?
Yeah. Indriyani mano buddhi asyadhishthanamuchyate etair vimoha yatyesha jnanamavritya dehinam. The senses, the mind, and the intellect are said to be its seat. Through these, it deludes the embodied by veiling his wisdoms.
So remember we had these metaphors. What is it that deludes a person? It is kama, craving, krodha, anger, and like smoke envelops a fire, the way the womb envelops the egg, so these envelop this ignorance envelops our wisdom. And last night we spent quite a bit of time talking about how it is vasana. That's the problem. Vasana are these impressions left in the unconscious as the result of our indiscriminate revelry with the objects of the senses through lifetimes, and this rooted, habituated identification largely with the body. From that ignorance that the vasanas cause, then the desire arises. Then we start getting involved with the world, which is always in the end disappointing. World isn't bad, it's just little. That leaves us frustrated. So it is the sense organs as they interact with the sense objects. All of our problems are delivered to us through sense data. Something terrible is going on in politics. If you don't listen to the news, you don't know about it. There's a war going on around the world. If you don't know about it, it doesn't affect you. Antithetically, if your boss rips you a new one, you know it through the senses. So what we're enjoying to do, what the teaching invites us to do, is have a mind like a sieve. Just let sensory data pass through, positive and negative. I was talking with a friend today, and he's not a yogi, but he does try to work his own particular spiritual program. And he gets all caught up because he gets criticized at work, and he thinks they don't love me, they don't accept me, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And boy, is that a losing proposition. It's always problematic if we're looking for worth, looking for validation through this distorted mirrors of other people's opinions. Like there's an old slogan in Washington, D.C. among the politicians: if you want a friend in politics, get a dog. But the point here is we keep looking for something through the senses. And what the yogi wants to do is give up these attachments. My well-being, my self-worth is not dependent on what comes in through the senses. So here's a couple slogans that I find useful. What other people think of me is none of my business. And what I think of other people is none of theirs. Mauna. Restraint of tongue, pen, and send button. I went to the symphony with another friend on Thursday. All in a dither. I unfriended somebody on Facebook. Because he sits there and it's what I call a clickavist. He's not an activist, he's a clickavist. All he does is argue with people on social media. Talk about something dumb. We're never going to change other people's minds. And all we do is upset ourselves and others. Doesn't mean not to use social media, but find out what your friends are doing. People get all caught up in that sort of nonsense. Then we react and get all stirred up, and we suffer. Kama, karma, krodha, the KKK, which gets us into trouble. And all of this comes through sense data. So when sense data comes to us, see if we can let it just pass through, not get upset, not get reactive. I think people now in the psycho-spiritual world use the term triggered. to get triggered by things out there. Make peace of mind the most prized possession. Nothing in this world is important enough for us to lose our peace of mind. And in some ways, that's just a decision. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
तस्मात् त्वमिन्द्रियाण्यादौ नियम्य भरतर्षभ पाप्मानं प्रजीह्येनं ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम्. Therefore, O best of the Bharatas, controlling first the senses, kill this sinful thing, the destroyer of knowledge and wisdom.
Yes. So, what we want to do now is work on what Swamiji used to call tuning up the mind, keeping it deeply introverted, not letting the mind gush out into the senses and all over them. Stay empty. Let the sensory data pass through, positive and negative. Don't let it land. Maintain, as we talked about in second chapter, the samadrishta. The yogi's mind is the same. Heat and cold, pleasure and suffering, honor and dishonor. Heat and cold is a catch-all phrase for the positive and negative physical experiences. Pleasure and suffering are the mind's reactions to conducive and non-conducive environments. Honor and dishonor are the intellect's judgments. I'm okay, I'm not okay, they're not okay. All pass through. Just keep the mind samadrishta. Equanimity. As we're acting in the world. Now, we've talked about this before, but here's a good review. Guru. Now, the literal meaning is heavy, but another etymology of guru is gu, which means something which is hidden. So the guru reveals what is hidden. And guru shows up in three places in our lives. First is the physical person. And Swamiji always used to say the external guru is a temporary psychological device. Don't romanticize it. The guru is a midwife, a gardener who does a bit of pruning. Show us the most direct path, can inspire us. The second place where guru shows up is in the circumstances of my life. So once we've stepped onto the path, we become conscious of the fact that I will now start drawing. We've always been doing it anyway. I will draw to myself exactly simply those external circumstances which show me where I've attached and identified. And if I don't deal with it, don't worry, it'll come around again. So frequently I will say, who got disturbed this week? Tell me this is the first time you've had this feeling. Tell me this is the first time this set of circumstances has shown up. Honest. Maybe a half a dozen things that upset me. And the ignorant person plays whack-a-mole with the world. It's the wrong place, it's the wrong person, it's the wrong job, it's the wrong politics. If only they would do it differently, I'd be okay. And the yogi understands that's my guru. So the fellow I was talking with this morning, he's challenged because he's moved up to a new level of responsibility in his company. And all of a sudden, the boss above the boss he had manages by intimidation. No excuses. You have to produce. Do whatever it takes to produce. He's a scientist, so he's got to get this stuff done. He's finding himself leaving the lab at 7, 8, 10 o'clock at night. It's incredibly stressed. But much of his stress is not just the hard work. It's what his mind is doing. That's stuff we can deal with our yoga. So that's his guru right now. And it can be in your relationship. It can be with your kids. You have a child, don't you, Ashley?
I do.
Yeah. I forget, is it a son or daughter?
A son.
Yeah.
He's 9.
And he's your guru on occasion, isn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what do we need to do? How to let go and keep our hearts open. How to act in a compassionate and loving role. Of course, you're the parent. Not coming from anger. Not coming from fear. Not coming from a need to control. These sound familiar?
Yes.
I'm not picking on you because every parent goes through this. It's part of the deal of having babies. And every relationship takes hard work. I like to tell the story of there was a couple in my old church job that was celebrating 60 years of marriage. And my boss had them stand up to get a blessing. And he asked them, have you ever thought of divorce? And the wife thought a moment. She said, divorce? No. Murder? Yes. Hard work being in relationship. Your spouse is your guru. By that, I don't mean you're servile to your spouse. I mean, the issues that arise is where we do the yoga. In our jobs, in our families, in our communities, in our health. When I lost my sight 25 years ago, wonderful Catholic nun said to me, "Oh, Jim, tough gift, isn't it?" Just hit me between the eyes. It was fabulous. This was my guru. What's the lesson to learn here? So, guru in the world is the second place it shows up. In time, when we have silenced to some degree the screaming voices of raga and dvesha, I must have it this way, I'll never do it that way, attachment and aversion, then we begin to find Guru as the still small voice within us. I don't mean it actually talks to us, that's metaphor. The intuition, our sense of rightness. Another example. So I was working with a fellow, and the same kid was the scientist. And in order to get stuff done timely, he cut some corners on an experiment. He's an experienced scientist. He's done this kind of work for a long time. He thinks probably there will be no effect on the data because he did that. But he knows that he's cutting corners and being sneaky about it. But he's done enough yoga. When he was here this morning, it makes me uncomfortable. It just adds to the stress. So this is where our conscience becomes guru. Who's had the experience where you get angry and you say an unkind thing and you just feel terrible that you did it? And you have to get off your pride. Go to the other person. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that or done that. Will you forgive me? It's not easy. So, 3 places Guru shows up. The temporary psychological device of the external guru. A good guru puts himself out of business with the student. You do not want to have lifelong dependency. You will always love your guru, but you don't want to have dependency. He should, or she should, put himself out of business. 2, the world. The data we receive through the senses. If I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the klesha, the defilement, the affliction. I'm the one with the dosha, the defect. Doesn't mean the world and its people are not oftentimes quite wrong. But if I'm disturbed, I'm the one with the problem. And the third place it shows up, my own deep inner wisdom. Next verse.
Indriyani paranyahu indriyebhya param mana manasastu para buddhya yabuddhe paratastu sa. They say that the senses are superior to the body. Superior to the senses is the mind. Superior to the mind is the intellect. One who is even superior to the intellect is he, the Atman.
Yes. So here is a brief reference to our classic Vedanta meditation of Drishya Viveka, discrimination between the seen, seer, self and the not self. So the grossest level of the grossest body we have actually is not the physical body. The grossest body we have is the body of our affairs. My family and my job, my friends. That's the most external. And all the data then comes in through the senses in the body. And all of that is interpreted by the mind. But all of the sense perceptions are anatman. The body is anatman, not self. The mind and all its reactivity, its reactions, not self. The intellect with all of its thoughts, not self. Some scriptures will use the phrase, in the cave of the intellect shines the self. So if you have a bat cave, bats are content, cave is context. A lion cave, lion is content, cave is context. In the cave of the intellect, thought is content. What is the context? Where do my thoughts actually occur? In a pristine, shoreless ocean of pure awareness. I never change. Only the thoughts, the feelings, the body, and the world change. And I'm like the center of the cyclone, unmoving. Don't believe Lord Krishna. Look, see. Next one.
एवं बुद्धे परं बुद्ध्वा संस्थभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्. Thus, knowing him who is superior to intellect and restraining the self by the self, slay you, O mighty armed, the enemy in the form of desire, no doubt hard indeed to conquer.
Yes. So what we need to do is strike at the root of desire. Now, this is very important. Suppression does not work. Remember earlier, Krishna has said the person who gets rid of the objects of the senses of desire, but allows the desire to remain behind is verily a hypocrite. But their desire leaves them upon seeing the Supreme. Meaning, we use the ruthless rule of the mind to let go of the world. The ruthless rule of the mind is the mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy. Always. You can wish it were not so. So, how do we conquer desire? And I use the image of the tricycle and the bicycle. When you were a toddler or a little bit older, you may have had a three-wheeled tricycle that you pedaled around the driveway. I loved my tricycle. And when I got a little older, my parents got me a two-wheeled bicycle. Started with the training wheels, and I learned how to balance. I was off to the races all over the neighborhood. What happened to my desire for the tricycle? Because I had a better toy. So, this is why it's so important not only to let go of the world, but to practice meditation, long meditation, until we begin to have moments where we have objectless peace, objectless serenity, contentment, joy. A wonder of wonders. No object is causing this. It's just the mind letting go of the world, coming home to itself. And even if in the beginning it's very rare, or very tenuous, once you've begun to have this Brahmananda Rasa Swad, this taste of the juice of the bliss of Brahman, then the same energy, the raga, that drove the mind into the world will drive you towards the infinite. The mumukshutva, the burning desire for freedom, and the raga, the passion for the phenomenal world, they are the same thing. Raga, we're just looking for love in all the wrong places. It's not fulfilling, it's not rewarding. And I become under the throes of kama and krodha. But when it comes to yourself, wherever you go, there you are. It's always available. It won't rot your liver. Doesn't cost anything. You don't have to look your best. The only condition to it, let go of the world. Don't leave the world. Just let it go. Mind will come home. But if we are a lip Vedanta, meaning all we do is read the scripture and watch YouTube, go about our business, and we don't have nididhyasana, long and continuous meditation, then it stays at a theoretical level. The mind will continue to extrovert into the senses. Have to cast off the desires of the mind and learn to taste the juice of the bliss of Brahma. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Okay, so I think that was the last one. Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Karma Yogo Nama Tritiyodhyaya. That ends the third chapter.
Entitled Karma Yoga. Okay, going on to chapter 4, the renunciation of action in knowledge. Going first one.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktvanahamavyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manurikshva Kave Bravit. I taught this imperishable yoga to Vivasvan. Vivasvan taught it to Manu. Manu taught it to Ikshvaku.
So here, Lord Krishna says something that just sounds weird. So Arjun's seen this guy. He knows that Krishna had a mother and a father. Krishna now says, I, at the beginning of humanity, taught this yoga to these ancestors. What in God's name is he talking about? First of all, Krishna's in a full state of yoga. He is an avatar. So that's no different. This is for Ashley as the cosmic Christ. We talked about this last time, that exists before the incarnation of Jesus. We can call it the salvific principle. So what does it actually mean? So anthropologists are now telling us that by tracing DNA, most specifically mitochondrial DNA, the entire human race is descended from one woman in the Olduvai Gorge of Africa around 65,000 years ago. That doesn't mean there weren't other people around, but all those genetic lineages have died out. There was what they call a genetic bottleneck. There was some cataclysm, probably a volcano, and the ash, they think what we now call Krakatoa may have erupted, and there was a crop failure, animals died, human race almost went extinct. But the point is, that woman did the mufti pufti with her partner. They made babies, and then you and I, all of us, can trace our genetic lineage all the way back. What Krishna is saying, I learned this knowledge from my guru, Swami Chinmayananda. He learned this knowledge from his guru, Swami Tapovanam. Swami Tapovanam learned it from his guru, whose name I do not know, but I think he was the Shankaracharya of the Sringeri Math. I do not know who his guru was, but because they were Swamis, that lineage goes all the way back to Adi Shankara, 788 to 820. His guru is Govindapada. His guru is Gaudapada. You don't know who Gautama's guru is, I don't think. But what Krishna is saying is this knowledge goes back in this Guru Shishya Parampara, this transmission from teacher to student or students. And it's co-eternal with humanity itself. It is part of what makes us human. These lineages are lost in time. Now, if you're Indian and you're a Brahmin, various Brahminical families trace their lineages back to certain rishis. Does your family do that? I don't know. Are you a Brahmin family?
No.
Ganesh, yours is. Do you know what the rishi is from which your family is descended?
Yeah, Kaushika.
Yeah. So ideally, the knowledge has been at least to some degree passed on. When did Kaushila live?
I don't know, Kaushika. I don't know what his
Kaushika.
yeah, I don't know what his timeline is.
But lost way, way back, these rishis, this is probably Bronze Age. And the traditions have been passed on since that time. And before him, who did it? But what Krishna is saying is you can have faith in this transmission, moving forward to the 21st century. Many people have asked me, oh, Jim, why do you teach from these dusty old Sanskrit scriptures? They're hard to understand. There's so much cultural context. Why don't you just speak from your heart? And I'll tell you why. Because the tradition is powerful. It works. It's not for everyone. But there are students that I have who've been serious students of this work who have no doubts about their essential nature. It's not because Jim is smart. It's because the tradition is powerful. It is a valid means. There are many of them. There's Sufi ones, Buddhist ones, and Christian ones, and stuff like that. Vedanta makes no claim of exclusivity, but it is a valid means of knowledge. And Chinmaya was a master at wielding it. If this one can be a poor reflection. Thank you, Swamiji. But you can have faith that you're getting the real stuff. My suggestion is mistrust some teacher who's making up his own yoga. That doesn't mean there's not cultural bias and dross in the tradition. Every jewel has a bezel around it, a setting, which is religion. Sometimes people confuse the jewel for the setting. The tradition itself is incredibly powerful. And you don't have to trust Jim. You can trust Lord Krishna. You can trust Adi Shankar. You can trust Gaudapada. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshyo vidu sakale neha mahata yogo nashtah param tapa. This knowledge, handed down thus in regular succession, the royal sages knew. This yoga, by long lapse of time, has been lost here, O Parantapa, burner of the foes.
So there are times in history where it is lost. When that happens and people's need is great, an avatar appears. Straighten stuff out and reinvigorate the tradition. Almost always, it's about moving. Remember, I talked about the jewel in the bezel. People start to focus on the bezel and not the jewel. The avatar comes and says, no, bezels are fine, but focus on the jewel, the chinda money, the wish fulfilling gem, that which really satisfies the human. Going on.
Sa evayam maya tedya yoga proktah puratana bhaktosi me zakha cheti rahasyam hyetuduttamam. That same ancient yoga has been taught to you by me, for you are my devotee and my friend. This is a supreme secret.
Yes. So Arjuna learns from Lord Krishna that the teaching that is given him, which we get to overhear in the song of the Lord, we overhear the conversation, is that same perennial knowledge that's at the heart of what makes us human. And I tell you, the knowledge you're receiving now is that same knowledge. Going on.
Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvata kathametad vijaniyam tvamadau proktavaniti. Later was your birth, and prior was the birth of Vivasvan. How am I to understand the son? How am I to understand that you taught this yoga in the beginning?
So Arjuna confuses Lord Krishna with the body that's in front of him. One of the things Swamiji used to say over and over again is, find out who the guru is. So I had a student, this is maybe a month, 6 weeks ago, sitting right there where Vinayak is. They said, did you grieve when Swamiji died? Didn't that make you sad? And I had to tell him the truth. I said, no, because he didn't go anywhere. He wasn't that man in the orange robes. Early on, I learned to tune up to him, tune in, and abide in that thunderous silence. And in terms of the teaching, after a while, I knew what he was going to say before he said it. The Vedanta is incredibly repetitive. But we're slow learners. And in the end, I found it was a trick. That deep, thunderous silence, that fullness that is so empty. Words fall short. It's our self-nature. It was a trick. So in some of those precious moments in class, when our minds are tuned up, that deep, deep peace, that deep, deep bliss is available to us. Sometimes I just want to say, meet Swamiji. He went nowhere. He's myself. He's the self. Chidananda Rupa. His nature is bliss consciousness. Who's there to grieve about? But for the person who's ego identified or identified with the body, that seems unreasonable. So Arjun's having the same problem. He thinks Krishna's his body. Even though I think he's beginning to get intimations of who and what Krishna is. All right, next one.
Sri Bhagavanuvacha Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava cha Arjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam vetha param tapa. Many births of mine have passed as well as yours, O Arjuna. I know them all, but you know them not, O Parantapa, scorcher of foes.
So there are lots of layers of understanding here. When we read stories about the enlightenment of the Buddha when he's sitting under the Bodhi tree, there are sections where it talks about all his past lives were made known to him. Lord Krishna says here he knew all his past lives. Some of us may have memories of prior lives. Listen very carefully. It's not necessary for self-realization. Right here, right now, your mind has the sum total of all your lifetimes. It's your psychological bundle. right here, right now. We don't need to go causation hunting as to where it came from. But there's a deeper meaning to this verse. So if I am not my body, I'm not the prana, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect, I'm not ahankara, I'm that witnessing consciousness. Whether he knows it or not, Vinayak is not his body, not the prana, not the mind, intellect, etc. He is witnessing consciousness. And so is Ganesh, and so is Ashley, and so is Mark. And so was my mother. And so were all my ancestors. And so were the ancestors of everybody who's ever lived. And the dogs and the frogs. One self as life principle in everything. When you realize your own self, you realize the self in everything, and the self in everyone who has ever been. Doesn't mean you know the particulars of that particular incarnation, but you know the self of them. Now listen carefully. This verse is not to be used as an impetus. Oh, I need to go get a past life reading. Those are rabbit holes that you can go down, which in the end, at best, are interesting, but not necessary. Much more important, focus on Koham. Who am I? Not from incarnation to incarnation, but what is the self in me? It's a far more fruitful investigation. And the other end, people say, oh my God, I'm so afraid I'm going to come back in a lower birth. Question I would ask is, do you incarnate into a dream? Are you in the dream, or is the dream in? This is no different. You are not in the body. The body is in you. You are birthless, changeless. Any thoughts on this verse? Next one.
Ajopi sannapyayatman bhutanamishvaropi san prakritim swamadhisthaya sambhavamyatmamayaya. Though I am unborn and am of imperishable nature, and though I am the Lord of all beings, yet ruling over my own nature, I take birth by my own Maya.
So, here, Lord Krishna, as an avatar, is not compelled into incarnation because of kama, craving. It is an ultimate act of compassion. It is our yearning that brings the avatar into the world. Now, how is that useful to you and me? The truth is, the self in you is birthless, changeless, and deathless. And your equipment has taken form as part of the Jagat, the whole creation. You can say the material world is the body of God. Don't separate your own puny little human life out from that. Your equipment is here for a purpose. What am I supposed to do? Serve the society. Or am I supposed to do something big and special? Have I been chosen? Well, you are chosen, but the world may not see it as big and special. Do good. Be good. Try not to be a jerk. And all of our actions are puny compared to the fruit of realizing our own self nature. And if it's given you as a job by the infinite, passing it on. In this Guru Shishya Parampara. I went through 16th chapter of Gita, the first part, with a friend who is a conservative. And we've had discussions. And he happens to think that the current president is better than the alternatives. And I've talked with him and I've said, well, for me, character is important. And his response is, we're not electing a Sunday school teacher. So we went through 16th chapter of Gita, the first, dozen verses, where the Lord talks about the divine and devilish states, the qualities of those who have the divine, the divya qualities, straightforwardness, honesty, truthfulness, non-injury, etc. And the demoniacal, who is caught up in ego, getting what I want, revenge, lying, stealing, etc. And that in itself, he says, that person goes to destruction. And that's, a good personal teaching. But it also says it contributes to the destruction of the society. Leaders do, other people follow. So what you and I do in the world makes a difference. We primates learn by imitation. One of my favorite videos to watch, there's a whole series of them, is Orangutan Jungle School. It's about rescuing these orphan orangutans in Borneo. And they have surrogate mothers. They call them teachers. And what they do is they teach these baby orangutans how to survive in the jungle. But the orangutans learn by imitation. Now, there's this one video, and this woman has got a coconut. There's this big pose. So she takes the coconut and she's pounding on the coconut to crack open the coconut. And all these little baby orangutans are just looking at her. And then after she demonstrates how to get at the coconut juice and the coconut meat, then all of them try to do it. And, some are more successful than others. It's a learning process. But my point is, they learn by imitation. We're not so far away from our primate cousins. What you do, who you are, speaks much louder than anything you can say. So whether we believe it or not, the way we move through the world makes a difference. Do good, be good, and try not to be a jerk. It's so important. Tell the truth. Be solution-oriented. Work hard. Renouncing your attachment of the fruits. Be generous. Be kind. Be forgiving. All these qualities, most of us should have learned in kindergarten. But they're spelled out in so many places in the scriptures. 16th chapter is a good place to look. What are positive characteristics to inculcate, to embody? What are ones that probably will cause you to suffer? Because we're not so far away from the orangutans. Other people see us. And if they want what you have, they will endeavor to do what you do. Any thoughts on this? And again, when we get to 16th chapter, we'll go into it in greater detail. Okay, we need to end here. What verse are we on for next week?
Number 9.
All right. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.